Hello, geekologists! This is Systematic Geekology. We are the priests of the geeks. I am one of your geeks, Kevin Schaefer, and we have a full crowd today. Three of my favorite geekologists here with me. So, Andy Walsh, Will Rose, Christian Ashley. Guys, how are you today?
Excited to talk about Peter David.
Beautiful expression, Will.
Yeah.
I was saying, if this one goes to audio, Will was doing the kiss of just like, I am well today. So that's all. Yeah, we are excited here. But yeah, well, this is a very special episode of Comic Book Ketchup today. We are honoring the late great Peter David, who is one of the most influential comic book writers of our time, who recently passed away, and we just wanted to do a celebration of his work, talk about some of our favorite books and stories. And he did not just comics, he did TV, he did novels. He was just really a superstar in our community. So we have a lot to discuss there. And if this is your first time to Comic Book Ketchup, welcome. This is where we talk about all the latest comics we've been reading. So obviously this episode is going to be a little different because it's honoring one creator in particular. But we definitely check out the rest of ours on YouTube and check out Systematic Geekology wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review the show. It really helps us a lot. But, well, guys, before we get into our main topic today, let us go to the lightning round where we hit on a few other things we've been geeking out on. So let's see. Andy, we'll start with you. What are your picks?
Sure. So let me get the right slides up here.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, got one ahead. So a couple things that stood out to me that I've read recently. A self-contained trade called Model 5 Murder. It's a noir murder mystery using a sci-fi conceit. I don't want to say too much more than that, but yeah, so it's got that nice murder mystery vibe, but it's doing a twist on that you can only do in a sci-fi setting. So fun little self-contained story there. And then over in the X-Men world, two of my favorite recent mutants, Ms. Marvel and Gwenpool, have got miniseries going on right now. Ms. Marvel's taking a tour through X-Men continuity. She's not breaking or changing X-Men continuity. Do not worry, hardcore, longtime fans. This is, one of those timeline wonkiness kind of things. Legion is involved, another of my favorite characters. And it's a fun little excuse to revisit some classic stories. Most recently, Age of Apocalypse, which was one of my favorites when I was reading back in the 90s. And then Gwenpool has another miniseries, a little, always fun with that kind of fourth wall bending, meta narrative kind of twisting fun stuff. It's only 2 issues in, don't know where it's going. There was a big cliffhanger at the end of issue 2 that has me wondering where we're going, what's happening here. But I'm sure it will be fun and exciting and surprising as previous Gwenpool stories have been. So those are my lightning picks.
I love it. And Andy and Will, I don't know if you guys saw, but on the last episode of Comic Book Ketchup, Joshua actually picked an X-Men book as one of his main titles to discuss. So you guys have rubbed off on him.
We finally, he's starting to have some good opinions. Yeah, Andy, the final, that's why we do comics, right? Like the final page reveal cliffhanger that makes you buy the next issue is why I keep coming to the comic book store every Wednesday for new comics. So yeah, if there's a comic that can do that, that's really good. And I've really enjoyed the journey through the X-Men timeline with Miss Marvel too. It's been a lot of fun. Love it.
Awesome. Well, on that note, what are your picks for the lightning round?
Yeah, I like it, in terms of we're in the season of summer blockbusters, and usually there's a big event over the summer that leads into something, huge and different from whatever character you like in the comics. They're trying to lure you in with a big summer event or something to get you buy extra books. Well, I guess, I don't know how Marvel and DC got the rights or, who owns Godzilla these days. Christian, who owns Godzilla? Is it 20th Century Fox? Is it?
I mean, it's Warner Brothers, but I think through different licensing deals, you can get different versions of Godzilla.
Yeah.
So that they can get away with it. Like the Thor one was the GMK version.
Mm-hmm. And there was a time when Godzilla was under the Marvel banner, like they had an ongoing series from Godzilla and the
it's a lot of fun.
popularity and hype of the 70s and 80s of Godzilla. But anyway, there's all these big crossovers between Marvel characters and Godzilla. So you have X-Men versus Godzilla, Spider-Man versus Godzilla, Avengers versus Godzilla, Incredible Hulk versus Godzilla. There you go. And then the latest one that came out just this past week is Godzilla versus Thor, which is incredible. So I'm loving these crossover events. There's also some big crossovers with Predator and Alien. And so, if they're going to lure these big summer blockbuster or movies franchises into the comics and vice versa, it only seems natural to have some team ups and crossovers. And I think these Godzilla versus the different characters in the Marvel Universe is leading to Godzilla Destroys the Marvel Universe #1. So they're all one shots. We'll see what happens with that. But they've been a lot of fun. Different authors and creators, artists, letters, colorists have been on these books and a lot of fun. The latest one with Godzilla versus Thor is Jason Aaron is back writing Thor with Godzilla. Woo! There we go. Godzilla, maybe a God Butcher. I don't know if he's a God Butcher. You have to read the comic and find out. Going into Thor. So lots of fun.
Well, I was just saying to a friend the other day, because we were talking about how Godzilla's been everywhere, and they did a Justice League versus Godzilla book, and they just came out with a sequel to Batman Ninja. So if DC Animated wants to do another bonkers animated movie, that's my pitch: is do Justice League or Batman Godzilla. I'm sure James Gunn listens to our podcast, so there's
come on, James.
Yeah.
Mr. Gunn, we're ready. We're ready. Love it.
We humbly request. Yeah, awesome. Well, excellent picks here. And then, Christian, what about you for your late round?
I just finished up the 8-issue miniseries of Defenders of the Earth, which, if you're not aware of who they are, we've got the Phantom, Mandrake the Magician, Flash Gordon, Lothar, based off of different properties from earlier on that were all put into the Defenders of the Earth cartoon in the 80s. And this is a continuation of that. Overall, I really like it. I mean, there's some issues of it doesn't really go full Last Jedi as far as certain things are concerned with mentors and older characters returning. But there are some things I was like, okay, that's an interesting choice. But overall, I think it's really obvious that they care about the series. It was very fun seeing characters grow up and deal with the repercussions of the end of the series. So that was fun. As well, I am really enjoying. I can't believe I haven't talked about this before, but the Miles Morales Spider-Man series that Cody Ziegler, I think it's Ziegler, is doing right now is incredibly fun. He's also doing a really fun Deadpool run right now, and I think they just started Deadpools and Wolverines. I think that came out last week. Mm-hmm. And for the Miles Morales stuff, though, it's doing a really good job of making Miles a separate character from Peter, having his own supporting cast and villains and everything. Right now, we're in the middle of a godly tournament arc because Anansi has made Miles like his representative, and Thor and Hercules are involved, and we got some demigods joining in for the fight, some of which are brand new characters that have been really fun. It's a great tournament arc. You can definitely tell that Ziegler is very inspired by manga and anime and how he's going about this. It's, like I said, it's just nice to have a fun run of Spider-Man right now where he's a competent character, even though it's not Peter.
I don't know, Christian. I definitely think there have been some great Miles books in recent years, both in the main continuity and then some standalone stuff as well. Which, I mean, is not that surprising given the character's popularity right now. They put a lot of effort toward it. But I totally agree. It's just this is what Spider-Man should be. It has all the fun elements there. That yes, I'm not going to awaken the beast of Christian's rant against the Peter Parker continuity right now. I think we are all well familiar with that. But I do agree. The Miles stuff is fantastic. So
yeah, we don't want another Godzilla scream and it's Christian. It could happen.
I think he could be louder than the actual Godzilla effect.
I think so
too.
I think so.
There's some days I just wake up screaming the name Nick Lowe and I curse you. And
Nick doesn't listen to the podcast. Don't worry.
I'd say it to his face.
You would be that guy at a con that would just go up and start.
No, I wouldn't do that.
Security would escort you out. And there'd be stories on Conflict Resources. About
that. The nicest, most peaceful guy that I know, Christian. I'm the one who's like a bouncer trying to take him out so he doesn't get beat up by Nick Lowe and then fighting. Yeah, that's a continuity that I want to see.
I was about to say that sounds like a comic book right there.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Christian. And then mine. So actually, so I don't have any comic books right now because I was in Disneyland about a week ago for a conference related to my disability group, but my family and I were also there on vacation. And as you can see here, my nephew and I got to meet. We were in line for Red Guardian, and while I was explaining to him, because my nephew's 5, so he has not seen Thunderbolts or any of the MCU movies, but he's obsessed with like all the Disney Plus, cartoons that are geared toward it. So he loves Spidey and everything, of course. But I was explaining to him who Red Guardian was, and then like right before we got up to meet him, Iron Man came out too, so we got that great picture there.
Sweet.
It was awesome. But like we had just met Black Panther and Doctor Strange right before that, so we scored on characters that day. It was great. But I will say, so like at Avengers Campus here, this is at Disneyland in Anaheim, California, and like Red Guardian is like one of the characters right now that is a temporary one, obviously because of the Thunderbolts movie. But I really hope they make him a mainstay because he was hilarious. Like, I mean, the guy not only looked and sounded like David Harbour, but he was so in character. So when I went up to him, I was like, "Hey, I like your limousine service," and he responded immediately with like, "Yes, I give you a discount," and then like, it was awesome. And then I told him I saw his movie twice, and he says, "Yeah, it's my documentary. You see that?" Like, he's like, "I make you honorary Avenger." So yeah, it was hilarious, and they also had the Iron Man voice sound like just like RDJ, so it was so cool. Avengers Campus, if you like, that one is only in Anaheim. Like Galaxy's Edge, they have it both Land and World, and it's great, and it's pretty much the same thing in both. But Avengers Campus is only in Disneyland. If you ever get to go, it is a blast there. They have a Spider-Man ride. They have characters all out and about. They have a shawarma joint there. It's fantastic. So, it's awesome. But yeah,
Golly.
So,
well, out of all the hosts of Systematic Ecology, now Kevin's a member of the Avengers, so you're now the new leader. So there you go.
It works. So I can have ultimate authority here. But so that was a blast. That was mainly when I was geeking out on it. But between the conference and then family vacation, I really did not get much time to read or watch anything. So I'm behind on most stuff. I've been catching up this week, but yeah, Disneyland was a blast, of course. So just being
you don't need to read it. You don't need to read it. You're living it. You're living it. You're the character. You're the main character.
Pretty sweet. So yeah. So it was awesome, and yeah, Doctor Strange and Black Panther were great too. And then they had a little like Avengers show later in the day with like Cap, Ant-Man, Black Widow. Thor wasn't there the day I was, but then I had a friend who saw him the next day, so that was really cool. But yeah, so
super cool.
That was my lightning round. So that is me and my nephew Lucas, and then Red Guardian and Iron Man. We're all just hanging out. Yeah,
nice,
sweet. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for sharing your picks here, and let's get on to the main topic here. So like we said at the beginning, if you don't know, Peter David was a legendary comics writer, TV writer, novelist. I actually did get to meet him at GalaxyCon a couple years ago. He was a super nice guy, and he had legendary runs on Hulk, Supergirl, Aquaman, Young Justice. He was a writer on the Young Justice animated series. He also wrote for Babylon 5, Ben 10, Alien Force, and then he wrote a number of Star Trek novels. So he was a legend in our community, and so we wanted to really honor him, talk about some of our favorite books and our favorite stories related to him as a creator. I was actually just doing some research right before we were recording and looking at some of his background and origins, and he lived a really fascinating life. So does anyone want to start with either kind of an overview of Peter David's impact on comics and some of their favorite stories?
I'll just start here. I don't want to do the overview. I'll let Andy. You forgot X Factor there too. Andy's going to dive into some X Factor. Yeah, yes. But I will say we're getting to the time now where if you are a fan of comics in the 70s and 80s and even 90s, some of these legendary creators and authors and artists and colorists are getting older, and we're losing them. George Perez died a couple years ago. We were kind of spoiled by Stan Lee. We thought he was going to live forever, but some of these creators are starting to get older and pass away, and so there's tributes to them and how what they created. And I've shared before on Comic Ketchup that, people ask me all the time in the different circles that I run in and church and stuff. They know I'm a comic book fan and love superheroes. What's your favorite hero? What's your favorite superhero? What? And I'm like, man, that's hard right now. When I was a kid, I could tell you some of my favorite heroes, but now I follow the creators. Like if Peter David's going to write, an obscure C-list character, I'm probably going to read it because I want to hear his take on it. And so I mainly now follow, of course there's core books that I really love, X-Men, Thor, Batman, Superman. I'll follow and dip my, if I'm not collecting, I'm definitely keeping up with what's going on in those books, but I'll follow my favorite authors and artists just to see what their take is on a character. And Peter David was one of those creators for me that I would follow if he was writing something, to try to see his take on things and where he's going. Just a legendary person. I know who had some health problems there towards the end of his life and wrestle with that. So I don't know if somebody wants to take out like kind of an overview of where he started and where he went, those kinds of things. I'll get to some of the books that made impact for me later on when we get to that part.
So I actually did look up his Wikipedia earlier. I didn't know this, but so he wanted to write from a very young age, and he got into comics very early on and sci-fi and everything. But he started out in book publishing. He struggled initially to get writing jobs, and it wasn't until later that he was able to sell some stories and pitches here and there. But he started out in that, and he majored in journalism in college. His dad was actually writing reviews for movies and stuff when he was a kid, and so he got that kind of like itch for journalism through that, and and was just kind of, he worked his way up eventually. And actually his iconic Hulk run, which we'll get more into, that was, he was given it because no one else wanted it at that point. It was kind of a dying character, a dying book that no one really wanted to tackle, and it was kind of a prime opportunity for him to come on, and then he did a 12-year run on that book, so it was fascinating. That was really a pinnacle of his career. But yeah, and then like I said, he worked on a number of shows, number of novels, and really just it's really fascinating to see how comic creator, like the ones that came up in the 70s, 80s, or before, how they entered. Because now it's like, if you want to be a comic creator, you're not going to start off in DC or Marvel. You gotta really like get your foot in the door by making your own books, create your own stuff. And then you might eventually get something in the big two, but that's a heavy emphasis on might because it's a competitive market. But back in the day, I hear stories like Peter David, Marv Wolfman, and a lot of them were, even Chris Claremont was, I want to say, into like playwriting, I think, and like theater, and he had just scored an internship, and it was a lot of just finding who and that was what got them in the door. And some started as interns at the big two, and were able to sell stories here and there. So it was a different kind of way comics publishing worked in those days versus what it is now. But he did just a lot over the course of his career. And I like, Andy, I know, so for you, X Factor was a seminal book for you. If you want to talk about that and a little, like, I think Peter David probably had the most profound impact on you specifically.
Sure. Let's skip ahead there. So my introduction to comics really was Peter David's X Factor. The X-Men were on my radar from the Topps trading cards that came out in the 90s. I started collecting those, and because I was into baseball cards, and we had believe it or not, we had a shop in my neighborhood that was just for selling collectible cards in the early 90s. That was a thing that you could have a physical store and a viable business at in that time period. Was just selling baseball cards, football cards, all that kind of stuff. That was a huge thing. And so I was going in there collecting baseball cards because I was a big baseball fan, and then started picking up these Marvel trading cards and learned about some of the other superheroes. I knew about Superman and Batman and so forth, but I didn't know much about the Marvel superheroes. And so that was my first introduction to X-Men. Then the cartoon was coming out, and so that got me curious. And then a friend of mine in junior high said to me, he was reading X-Men comics, and he had a Wizard magazine, and he was showing me a Wizard magazine preview of this new X Factor series that was coming out. It's like, I think you would really get a lot out of this book. And so I didn't actually. I had the baseball card store I could get to, but I didn't have a comic book store that I could get to easily. So it took me a while before I was able to actually regularly get the comics. So I picked up the first issue. I think was like X Factor 77 or something like that. Was just the first one that I picked up, and man, I was hooked. Just it was this crew of interesting and different kind of characters. They weren't your typical superheroes. They had their own personal hangups and flaws, and they had senses of humor. And particular Multiple Man sense of humor really stood out to me. There's a gag in one of the first issues that he rigs a mayonnaise jar so that none of the superhero teammates can open this jar of mayonnaise, and then their human government liaison walks in and just sort of picks it up and nonchalantly opens the mayonnaise jar because he triggered it so that then it could open. And so that was just a running gag all through the comic, that you don't know what's going on, and then it pays off the end. You see Multiple Man just having a laugh at himself for his gag. There's Peter David was great at the thing that Chris Claremont gets a lot of credit for, the sort of long burning story plot lines, the B threads, the C threads, the D threads that you advance 1 or 2 pages at a time over months and years. But Peter David's really great at that too. There's a gag over the entirety of his first X Factor run, of this scientist who is going to go out and eliminate all the mutants and builds this exo suit to give him powers, but he doesn't. The first introduction, like he didn't figure out the batteries, and so he runs out of battery power within 2 seconds. And then he gets caught in the rain and his suit freezes up because it rusts. And there's all these things where it's just, one page just kind of interrupts the story of just like, here, let's check in on this mad scientist and how he still can't manage to pull off his grand scheme. And then he winds up dying, and his brother picks up the legacy. And then there's another brother, and but none of them ever, none of it ever comes to anything. And then the payoff to that is in X Factor Annual number 8, a magic character who has beef with Strong Guy brings back wants to get revenge on Strong Guy and X Factor, and so he uses his magic to summon up X Factor's greatest nemesis, and it's these three brothers. And X Factor just looks at them and goes, "Who are these people? Why are you here?" Because in the minds of these three brothers, X Factor were their greatest arch nemesis, but they never actually got to confront X Factor. And so X Factor had never met them, had no idea who they were, but they had been appearing in the pages of the X Factor comic. So it just, it's a great gag. And yeah, so that just really got me hooked on reading X Factor. That was the only book that I went back, I would go back into, long boxes at the comic book store and dig out. And so I could complete the full Peter David run on X Factor. Nice. I hadn't really done that with any other comic. It's only actually 19 issues, and I, was buying about half of them as they came out, but then I went back and tracked down the others. I tracked down, even though it wasn't written by Peter David, I tracked down the first appearance of Multiple Man in Giant Size Fantastic number 4, because I was so into this character. And then right towards the end of his run, issue number 87 has kind of become legendary in the X-Men world and the X Factor world of Peter David fans. He writes this issue that just all the different members of X Factor individually sitting down with Leonard Samson, the psychiatrist from the Hulk run, and just talking about their inner problems and their worries and their fears and their struggles. And we learn that, Multiple Man makes jokes and makes these duplicates because he feels lonely. And so he wants to make sure that he's never alone. And Strong Guy makes jokes because he's in constant pain. He doesn't want anybody to know about the pain that he's in because of his mutant power. And, Havoc feels, is dealing with being in the shadow of his older brother, who's the leader of the X-Men. And Polaris is dealing with, body image issues. And Wolfsbane is, dealing with, hormones and feelings of attraction and all these things, and Quicksilver is, feeling like, oh, he's just, everybody around him is just too slow. And why can't the world just operate at his pace? And as a 13, 14-year-old, that just really spoke to me, right? All these different struggles that these characters were having, I could relate to in some way or another, right? Obviously, I hadn't been, mind bonded to someone via the Genosian mutate bonding process or anything like that, but there were human emotional issues at the core of these characters that I could really kind of connect to at that age, and so that really kind of cemented my my interest in those characters. And it was unfortunate that was just 2 issues later he would be off the book because of some conflict over there was an X-Men line-wide crossover, which was all the rage in the 80s and 90s. The Executioner song crossover, and Peter David got stuck writing 3 issues of X Factor that really didn't feature any of his characters. Right, his characters got pulled into other books, and he had to write about like Bishop and Wolverine and Cable on a side mission, and it wasn't what he wanted to be doing, and so that led to him walking away from X Factor at the time. And then in the mid 2000s, he came back with a Madrox miniseries where Madrox has won money at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which was the big TV primetime game show at the time. And you know, Peter David kind of expanded on the multiple man mythos through that miniseries and the subsequent X Factor book, and introducing this idea that Madrox would send out all these duplicates to learn and gain new experiences, and then they'd come back and reintegrate, and now he'd know all these things. So you know, he had a lot of trivia knowledge because he had lived multiple lifetimes essentially in parallel, and so he wins Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. He uses himself as a phone-a-friend, and you know, he takes that money that he won and uses it to build a private investigator business. And so the miniseries is this very noir story of, you know, Jamie Madrox, private investigator, and that miniseries was successful enough that it launched another X Factor book, which was just called X Factor, but is widely known as X Factor Investigations. And you know, so we really dig into Multiple Man is definitely now the central character. Although it is a team book, and there's lots of other folks, including most of the original X Factor cast, come through it at different times. But it's definitely at its core a multiple man story, and so that just, you know, got me hooked from the get go. And seeing his, you know, how the ideas of what his powers mean and what he can do with them kind of deepen and expand was really cool. And I also like that, you know, Peter David does a really clever thing with the genre. So it starts out as this noir mystery, and you know, Jamie Madrox has this narration like he's the narrator of a noir story, right? Mm-hmm. And what you discover over time, over the course of about 50 issues, is that, you know, Jamie Madrox thinks he's in a noir mystery story, but he's really in this sci-fi time travel adventure, right? And so it's just this interesting genre mashup as he kind of discovers that, oh wait, I'm not really in the kind of story that I think that I'm in. And so I'm making mistakes because my expectations are driven by what kind of story I think that I'm in. And so there's this big arc that kind of culminates in issue 50, but then the book keeps going. It renumbers to number 200, back to the legacy numbering kind of thing, and carries on for another, I think, 62 issues. And there's another kind of genre shift as it goes from sci-fi to more of like horror, fantasy, dealing with demons. And Peter David, you know, brings back an idea that he had teased in the Hulk run of this war of demons, and that, you know, it was just kind of a name that got thrown around in that book for a while, then teased, and then finally brings it back in X Factor like 2 decades later, and that's sort of the climax of his run on X Factor. And yeah, again, that book really, you know, kind of clicked with me again as a young adult. This idea of, you know, Jamie Madrox being paralyzed by seeing all kinds of different choices that he could make, and not knowing which one is the best one, and not knowing how to choose and so forth. And, you know, as somebody who was, you know, recently married, looking to start a career, you know, that again kind of resonated with, all right, I've got a lot of opportunities in front of me, and I don't really know how to pick that. So it's, you know, those books have always been kind of, it just kind of hit at times where I needed that character to be going through the same things that I was going, and kind of being a mirror or a sounding board to reflect off of. Oh, this is how I'm coping with this, and here's how he's coping with this, and processing some of those things. So that, you know, as a result, no surprise that Multiple Man has become my favorite character, certainly in comic books, possibly in all of fiction. And so I've been a big fan ever since. You know, I've certainly read other Peter David books, but none of them have clicked for me quite as much as that run did. Although I was also a big fan, I was following his blog and like some of the writings just about his life and his stories and so forth. And if you Google, you'll see, you know, I was active in the comment section of the peterdavid.net blog for a while, including some ham-fisted attempts at like apologetics and evangelism at times, as well as talking comics and so forth. But that was one of the things that I liked about his comics, is they touched on all kinds of issues. Right? He wasn't afraid to to deal with the religious beliefs of his characters, with the different political philosophies. The initial run on X Factor touches on issues of immigration and abortion and some of these other big questions, and in a way that you can only kind of do again in sci-fi stories. So bring different angles to it. But I appreciated that he was willing to take on bigger themes in addition to the sci-fi nonsense and the punching and the superpowers, putting it all together. So yeah, I don't really have a way to land this, but I could ramble on forever about my love of
yeah. I'll add real
place to stop monologuing
real fast. Like if you're just listening to this and hop over to our YouTube page, because he has a slide there of Andy as Multiple Man talking to himself. It's a fantastic picture, and that's his avatar with our cast of hosts here. And I'll say that like I collected comics as a kid, and I dropped off for a little, and then hopped back on in 2003 ish, and then House of M came out, a big X-Men crossover event, and then coming out of that was the X Factor, a new X Factor #1 with Peter David that has Layla Miller, who was first appeared in House of M and then brought into X Factor and Multiple Man and Madrox and all the team there and Investigator, and it's just really good, quippy, witty writing. X-Men are all about the drama amongst themselves too, and how they work together as a team. And so you have the different uncanny X-Men, adjectiveless X-Men, then you have X Factor, which originated as like the original team came back up to investigate things and then kind of changed up along the way. But it really is a great book. So if you want to pick up that 2005 X Factor #1 in a trade somewhere, I highly recommend it as one of the books to go out there and find as like peak Peter David and his writing.
Yeah, I'll definitely second that one.
Yeah.
Because this one right here made me a fan of those characters that I did not previously care about before. And the reason it actually happened was back in the day, I was on comic book resources on the forums, back when CBR was actually a good website. And Peter David actually showed up on the discussion page for the X Factor book and said, "Hey, please don't spoil this." And I'm like, I'm having not reading what he's doing. I'm like, well, why not? So you tell me not to do something, therefore I want to go explore what that is. So he got me hook, line, and sinker. I started reading his stuff and find, the story of the pregnancy and the after effects of that happens there. That's one of the darkest things I've ever read in my life, and yet it's told in a way that's not hopeless or anything like that. It's done in a really great way. He actually made me care about these people, and he actually gave Layla Miller characterization versus being a plot device that she was in House of M. I really appreciated what he did with that. So go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, I was gonna say, Andy, that wasn't rambling at all. I was gonna say you've had many brilliant exposés into comics with your background as a geek scientist, but that was, I thought, I love hearing I never heard your origin as where it all began for you with creating comics, so that was fascinating to listen to. I just wanted to say that. But yeah, Christian. So that is, and are there any other books for you that really made an impact on you? I have to also say, like you, Christian, Peter David had 2 first names, so I think you have that connection as well.
Yeah. Real briefly, I do want to say his Aquaman run that he does is great, and the fact that there's this perception in the public consciousness that Aquaman was just this weak nobody loser, and that was kind of created based on the Super Friends cartoon, and that was their only perception of him. But he made Aquaman cool again. That's where he lost his hand. Got the hook hand. That was pretty fun. Then the Supergirl run that he did revitalized her character after all the continuity crises and on Infinite Earths and blah 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 that had happened along the way. Making a new character for her was good, but for me, it's gonna be Spider-Man. I mean, we'll talk about the Hulk later on too, but this is where he got me. He's had every now and then he would do fill-in issues on Amazing Spider-Man and Web of Spider-Man, but more often than not, he'd be in Spectacular during the 80s. And his run is it's not even in a run because, for the most part, he shows up for a couple of issues. Someone else fills in because that was kind of like the other books were at that time. And he starts off with a really fun story about this fake supervillain called the Blaze, and created by these college students, and Spider-Man investigating, and then getting Johnny Storm involved to pretend to be the villain to get back at the people pretending to make up this villain. It's a very fun story, and what this man does well is humor. If you're not laughing at a Peter David story, he must have had a really off day, or you just don't have a sense of humor. I don't know what to tell you. And he does that extremely well. And then he gets to a really dark, really good story in the death of Jean DeWolf. And she had been a character who had been around since the days of Marvel Team Up. I think she was actually a Claremont creation when he was in charge of Marvel Team Up at that time, where Spider-Man would just team up with other Marvel characters. And she became his friend on the Force, which was a great addition to his supporting cast. It was nice to have a police officer who actually trusted him and would go to him to advise, not to be like, oh, I've just fallen over you and everything you do is right, but like they would have a nice back and forth. And then you find in this story, she's been murdered. And it's not a stuffed in the fridge moment. It actually serves a purpose in the story. It serves a purpose for her character growth too, ex post facto, and it causes this deep destruction of Spider-Man's ability to not want to kill people. And that takes a lot because that's one of his big rules, a la Batman as well. Like, you, thou shalt not kill. And he's super big on, well, really, thou shalt not murder. And you get the great story of Spider-Man and Daredevil kind of teaming up but hating each other at the same time, because Daredevil's trying to work a little more, even as a vigilante within the system. And they discover each other's secret identities as part of this. So it increases their growth as characters. It's when they really start becoming friends. And then the great villain of this is the Sin Eater. And the Sin Eater, you find, is this person who sees all the sins of the people around them, and he's trying to like just get rid of it because he's seen too much, and like the world would be pure if it was gone. He's got wrestling with all these mental issues as well. And it turns out that he was actually her partner working in the Force, so who had been working alongside Spider-Man to find the real killer, which is a great twist. Like, now rereading it, say, okay, I see the signs a little more, but back in the day when I was reading it for the first time, it took me completely by surprise. And it's done really well. And even then, there's still bits of humor thrown in to make it not the bleakest thing in the world. And there's some great character moments for Peter as he's learning, why do I have this no kill rule? Like, why is someone like Matt Murdock, who I don't know is Daredevil yet, working and freeing these people? Because he's doing his job. He's working in the system like he's supposed to. But then at the same time, they learn about each other's secret identities and why they do what they do. I mean, this is a great story. And then the follow-up that he does later on, I think within a year or two, of Stan Carter being released from prison and wrestling with the past of what he did and trying to reform himself, and Spider-Man not being willing to get over that because he killed Jean DeWolf, one of his friends who you find actually was kind of attracted to him, that Peter finds out along the way. And the consequences of that story when Electro gets involved and Stan Carter ends up dying. It's tremendous. Like, spoilers abound, sorry. But this is one of the best stories of all time in comics, period.
I
Nice.
love it.
Nice.
Great cover too. Just the way she's in the foreground there, and then black suit Spidey up front there. I love it. But yeah,
Nice.
excellent pick. Sweet. Well, I can talk just a little bit about some of my picks here. So, Christian, you mentioned the Supergirl run, Roka, and so like you said, this one was kind of a reboot. This is not Superman's cousin, Supergirl, the one we know well. This was an original creation post Crisis on Infinite Earth. So, Kara Zor-El died in Crisis on Infinite Earth, and while DC hadn't brought her back yet, Peter David was allowed to, with artist Gary Frank, to create a new version, which was a Matrix shapeshifter who merged with the identity of Linda Danvers. Even just saying that, just say it's comics. I don't know how to say that. But nonetheless, it paves the way for some really interesting stories. And he did, the first few issues are kind of her really wrestling with her identity and trying to figure out who she is. Then it gets into some really wild sci-fi and horror stuff. And Andy, like you mentioned earlier, in terms of how Peter David wasn't afraid to tackle real world issues, he does stuff with like a televangelist villain here, but then he also has a preacher, like in a small town, who is an actual good person of faith. So he tackles those issues. I know. Like you're allowed to do that.
Yeah, you're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
How
exactly.
about that?
Yeah. How about that?
We can be good guys sometimes.
Right,
Oh, but Gary Frank as on art, I didn't know that was on there. That's he's up there as legendary too. Man.
Oh, this was like one of his well, I would have to look to see when Gary Frank started, but yeah, I mean, I know him especially from a lot of his collaborations with Jeff Johns. I mean, a lot of modern age stuff, and he's done some great Superman stories. But I think this, to my knowledge, this was one of his earlier runs, and it's phenomenal art. I mean, I just love that cover for one. But yeah, they started collecting these in trade paperbacks in about 2016, so around the Rebirth era. But yeah, this ran from late 90s. And so I want to say it ran about I want to say close to 80 issues maybe, something like that. So it's well worth checking out. I just have the big volume one of it, and yeah, again, what I like about this is like I said, it's a separate Supergirl from the one we know, so it opens doors for some really interesting fresh stories. Probably, I mean, there are some great Supergirl stories aside. Best in the modern age would be one of tomorrow. But this is a really fascinating classic run. Again, has that 90s touch to it. Is a good merge of sci-fi, horror, and yeah, if you don't think too hard about the whole idea for being a Matrix shapeshifter, and you just enjoy it, I think you'll have a good time with it. So,
well, I would just say, like, I read a lot of comics. I've read a lot of comics. I collected comics. I've never read this one, and you just kind of the revelation right now is like, I'm never going to run out of things to read. Like, I'm writing these recommendations down. I'm like, I'm gonna go get this one. I will, between now and the next 40 years or whatever I'm allowed here on Earth, I will not run out of things to read. I can't wait to go grab that. That sounds good.
Never, and I'm always going to have too much in my to be read pile as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely check out Supergirl. And then the one I really want to talk about is, like I mentioned, Peter David did a lot of work in animation and TV. And one of my favorite shows is Young Justice, which, partly he was a writer on that because he did a Young Justice comic for a long time. And he wrote my favorite episode of Young Justice, which is a Flash family episode in season 2. And this is one that it's just like what you were saying earlier about how like humor is integral to Peter David's writing. This is just a blast of an episode that it features all the Flashes. So Jay Garrick, Barry Allen, Wally West, and Bart Allen all in
What's
one.
the name?
And
What's the name of the episode?
let me look, and I should know that off the top of my head. But
That's okay.
I want to say Bloodlines, I think. Let me look it up. Well, actually, Christian, do you mind looking it up while I talk about it? I know it's in season 2. I should have looked at the title before. But but basically, it unites all the Flashes because throughout Young Justice, Wally West is the main Kid Flash in the earlier seasons. But this one, like I said, brought in all of them. And so just seeing Jay, Barry, Wally, and Bart all in the same room together is fascinating. And they make jokes about each other. They eventually unite to stop a crisis together. It's one of my all-time favorite episodes of like any DC animation, and this was just a great show as a whole. And I was watching it from the beginning when it was on Cartoon Network. It's actually gone to 3 networks as a whole, I think, because it started on Cartoon Network, then it got canceled, then it was revived by DC Universe, which was a streaming service for a while there, which I was a adamant subscriber to. That actually got me through a lot of the COVID because I knew it wouldn't last, but because it was only DC content, but it was really cool to have all the TV, movies, animation, and comics all on one app together. So I really enjoyed it. And so they did a season 3 there, and then eventually, once everything migrated to HBO Max / whatever it's gonna be called today, it went on to that streaming service for season 4. And it is just a great show of the younger superheroes here who are kind of becoming their own thing. They want to make themselves like not be the sidekicks, but form their own team.
Is that Dick Grayson? Is that Dick Grayson, Robin?
Dick, exactly.
Okay.
So
Yes.
he's Robin in season 1, and then he becomes Nightwing soon after. So yeah, you got Nightwing, Connor Kent, Artemis, Miss Martian, Kid Flash, Aqualad. That was the lineup from the first season, and then they get a lot of other characters as it progresses. So Speedy is on here. You get like Cyborg comes on later. It's a great run. But Christian, were you able to find the name of the
it was Bloodlines. You were right.
That's okay. That was okay. So yes. So
watch it tonight.
A couple in season 1, but yeah, and you can watch that episode as a standalone. I mean, watch the whole show, but that episode specifically is just a joy. So yeah, Peter David was an instrumental part of the show. I mean, the show was created by Greg Weisman and Brandon Vietti. And what I love about it too is that even with all of the behind the scenes changes and the network changes and all that, it remains really consistent throughout, and both of those creators stayed on it the entire time. So the animation style is consistent and fluid. It does a lot of great storylines, and yeah, Peter David wrote several episodes and was, I think, really essential to the team here. But yeah, it's just there are darker elements. I will not spoil who, but there are deaths in the show, and it gets heavy times. But at its core, though, there was still a lot of humor. A lot of just like team dynamics, and I think Peter David's writing in his Young Justice run in the comics really played a part in that. So yeah, this is one of my
Nice.
favorites, and specifically that episode is, I think, essential viewing for any Flash fan. Yeah,
Cool.
sweet. So those are kind of my pick. Anyone else have any other either storylines they want to talk about, or just like about Peter David's legacy as a whole?
Yeah, I'll chime in with his Hulk run. I think the you know, you have people like, you know, when you Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, they created the universe, right? They created Marvel. But then, you know, think like the best creator on Thor, Walt Simonson, Jason Aaron. Then you have X-Men, Chris Claremont. And then when it comes to Hulk, think about Hulk, you got Peter David. Like you said, he took it and started running with it. And then there's a storyline of Future Imperfect, the Incredible Hulk, Future Imperfect, 1992, and this is right around the time, you know, we had Chris Claremont did his Days of Future Past with X-Men. That was only freaking 2 issues. You know, today if you write like a big event like that, it's going to be 6, 8, maybe 12 issues, a big event that they got keep it stringing on. But Chris Claremont wrote it in 2 issues, and so Future Perfect again is 2 issues in 1992, and is and it extended to other elements within you know, the Hulk universe. But the basic line, you know, kind of storyline here is that there's this nuclear war, and AIM and MODOK, advanced idea mechanics, and then you have the mobile or mechanicized or mental organ designed only for killing, experiment on Hulk to make them immune to radiation. Well, but there is this nuclear war, and fallout happens, and one of the survivors of this is Hulk 100 years later. And so he goes to America. He's very disappointed about what has emerged in America and the fallout from this radiation. And come to find out, there's Maestro. Is that how you say it? Maestro, which is like Italian or Spanish for like music conductor, leader, teacher. But they and come to find out, there's this new ruler in America, and ends up being Hercules. And all he's worried about was like fighting and like sex and girls. And Hulk is very disappointed. They have a battle. Then he keeps going back, and then eventually Hulk, spoiler, becomes Maestro. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, but he becomes the actual ruler of this kind of Hulk that still has the smarts of Banner, but of course is immune to radiation fallout, and becomes ruler of this new world, alternate time, future timeline. And it really is an incredible character that's written to see, you know, these future timelines of what would happen in a fallout or dystopia or apocalypse. And if the Hulk is the survivor of this, becomes ruler. Rick Jones shows up. They talk him into being a rebel alliance. He ends up becoming what he doesn't like. So yeah, kind of a villain slash anti-hero in the midst of a nuclear fallout. It's an incredible story that you can pick up the trade, find that somewhere, and read it. It really is neat. And then the creator, other creator on this, artist George Perez, who died a few years back as well, legendary DC and Marvel artist as well. You guys, have you read this? What is this story and your timeline of reading comics?
Oh, I love this story. Like,
Really is
this
good.
is just so great of Hulk going to the future to see what he could possibly become, and like, I don't want to be that guy, but also dealing with the fact that he is going to be weaker than him, because this is a Hulk who has far more experience than him, and he can't beat him in an out and out fight just yet. So how does he go about that? And him teaming up with Rick Jones, and Peter David loves his Rick Jones. He's
Yeah, he
the one
does.
who kind of made him like even more competent, always prepared for the event of whatever's going to happen. Like his run that he does for Captain Marvel, Janice Fell as well, has a great run with Rick in it too. But to see like that hall of costumes and what's left of the heroes that came before that Rick Jones is like leaving up, is like, this is how things used to be. I'm going to leave this as a legacy. Like, these were the heroes we had, and now we need a hero again, and that's why you, Hulk, are here. I think it's through the Doctor Doom time machine that he's brought forward to the future, which is a huge callback all the way back to Fantastic Four 5, the very beginning of Marvel itself. You can tell this is a man who cares about his continuity and his characters. And his Hulk run is just so amazing. And this is part of that because the Maestro is essentially another form of Hulk in the same way that Peter David invents Joe Fixit, in the same way he invents the Devil Hulk, I think, in his run. And all that is, and Professor Hulk, who you might have seen in the most recent,
Right.
one of the most recent Avengers movies, is a result of his run. His impact on the Hulk alone is worthy of putting him in the Hall of Fame, and he's done far more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Maestro, like it definitely one of those characters when it shows up at the final page or shows up in a story, like, oh snap, that's about to go down. What's going on? Just legendary villain and slash character that things are about to get real and get serious when he shows up in a comic. So highly recommend reading that. And yeah, these authors and creators that create these stories, that's the source material for what we see on TV or the movies. We've talked about this before. The creators of these characters are not getting the compensation or the credit. They'll get their line in like an end credit, scroll of names, but not much compensation beyond that. So even Peter Dave was having his health issues, people were taking donations to GoFundMe funds to help him, because these guys and gals who are writing these comics, creating these characters, they're not compensated. They're not getting rich off this. That's for sure. There's very few who do. Unless it's creator owned material. So, good stuff. So that's my big recommendation, and to go out and read and hunt down, read that short storyline.
Excellent. Yeah. Very cool. No, I think we got some great picks. Like you said, Will, earlier, our to be read pile will never end.
Never end.
But yeah. Awesome, guys. Well, are there any others we want to hit on before we start wrapping up here?
He was also involved in the DC versus Marvel series in the 90s.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Decided by popular vote. So that's why Wolverine could beat Lobo, even though he has no reason to do so. I think Ben Reilly's Scarlet Spider also beats Superboy, which also shouldn't happen. But that is what it is. Comics.
Mm-hmm. Comics.
Did any of you guys read any of his novels too? Like, I don't know if you've any big Trekkies here, because he wrote a lot of Star Trek novels. I know too.
I have some. I've yet to read them.
Yeah, I was just curious because I mean, yeah, there are a lot of comics writers, particularly in that era, who did a lot of prose fiction.
Yeah, well. Just start writing. I'm curious, in terms of that universe, and see what his style is, and prose would be kind of cool to see. Add that to my list too. Cool. Andy threw up another slide here, pretty big when it comes to the present day movies. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, so he co-created Spider-Man 2099, which launched the 2099 universe in the mid 90s, and also now Spider-Man 29 was a big part of the Spider-Verse films.
Yep.
Peter David also loved. Yeah, Peter David also loved a good pun. And so I'll shout out his novel, Sir Apropos of Nothing, an original novel. There might have been more than one. It's been a while, but it's definitely at least one that was an original character that he created, an original novel series. But yeah, also some Star Trek novels. Very prolific. And should mention the Space Cases TV show that he co-created. Short-lived. Yeah. I'm not sure if it's anywhere that you can watch at the moment. But an interesting place to see some people who are already sci-fi legends like George Takei and Bill Mumy co-created or was worked on it with Peter David, co-created with him, Bill Mumy from Lost in Space, the original Lost in Space TV show, nice. And Babylon 5. But also folks like Jewel State. I think that was some of her first work, pre-Firefly. Michelle Trachtenberg. Walter Jones, who is more well-known from Power Rangers. I'm not sure where that falls in. That might have been post his Power Rangers work. But anyway, some interesting young early career work for some people, and some late career work for some other legends. He had an interesting connection to a lot of sci-fi folks, both on the screen sci-fi folks like George Takei, but also authors, novelists. And you can find out a lot about that on his blog, peterdavid.net, which is still up, and the archives are all still there. You can read stories of his his life
Nice.
interacting with all these other notable writers and actors and so forth. It's just kind of an interesting career. He definitely lived an interesting life in terms of intersecting with lots of different worlds and communities and so forth, and bringing a little bit of humor and enthusiasm and fun to all of them.
And I know it probably was not easy. I mean, you get those deadlines, you get those scripts, you got to turn out the stuff for comics, you're writing for TV shows and video games and cartoons and novels, and like the hustle is real, right? And the struggle is real in terms of turning that out and the creativity. I write one sermon a week, and then I have couple book ideas in my head, and it feels real hard to do unless you have a deadline. But man, what he would turn out to just legendary status, and so that's why we did this episode, to kind of lift him up. Important to Andy, important to all of us, and those things. And if you're listening to this, hop over to YouTube. That's where we do Comic Book Catch Up. If you're at Comic Book Catch Up and you watch on YouTube, hop over to the podcast and see what's there. We all geek out on different things, but comics and these graphic novels have a big impact across the board on the source material for what we geek out on TV and the movies. And so, go back and read some of the source material. You will not be disappointed.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is great. And just before we go, anyone want to recommend either something we talked about today or something different? I can start. I'm going to recommend Young Justice if you've never seen it. Again, one of the best DC animated shows ever done, and just a really great collection of characters and storylines that whether you don't even have to be really into the DC universe to enjoy, but if you are, I think you'll get even more out of it. So highly recommend that series. But Christian, what about you?
Think of something I haven't mentioned. Not really coming to mind. Oh, I do remember he also did, I think, a 4-issue run of the Phantom in the 80s, I think, for Marvel. That was fun. So yeah, check that out.
Very
cool. Yeah, I'd say getting ready for the Superman movie. Go back and watch Superman animated series too.
Yeah.
I was watching some of that last night, just having so much fun with that. But I'll do Future Imperfect. Like it's the impact that has in terms of an alternate future timeline with Earth 9200. These different timelines and how they can show up in multiverse stuff. But it's a good read. The flow of it really is just peak comics and graphic novel, and the characters coming together and the different sci-fi plot lines. Really, really good stuff. Go hunt that down.
And real quick, Christian and I will actually be doing an episode on Superman the animated series this week before the movie comes out.
Yep.
So
yeah. All right.
A lot of that one. Yeah. Andy, what about you? I know X Factor for sure, but any others you want to really recommend?
Sure. So I do want to highlight, if you're just going to read one thing, I'll highlight X Factor issue number 237. Is a story about one of multiple man's dupes that he sends out into the world becomes an Episcopal priest. And so that's a recurring character through that second X Factor Investigations run. And in number 237, Wolfsbane shows up, another one of the characters from the original X Factor run who shows up in the later one. She shows up at his Episcopal church, dealing with some things that she's been through, the kinds of things that can only happen in comics. I won't go into all of them, but it's just a very powerful, fairly standalone. You won't understand all the details of what Wolfsbane has been through, but otherwise fairly standalone story about dealing with guilt and grief and showing forgiveness and love and so forth that I found very powerful, and another positive example of a religious leader in comics, not somebody who turns out to be evil or hypocritical, but somebody who really just wants to show love and forgiveness and grace and to model God's presence in the world and as best as he imperfectly can. And so I think
we are out there. There are some out there. Thanks. If I have Marvel Unlimited, I will look that up tonight. I will read that before I go to bed. 100%.
And then I'll throw back again that Sir Apropos of Nothing, a sort of medieval knight comedy story that is original novel. Probably at your library or your local bookstore. Probably have to order it from your bookstore. It's probably been a while since it was published, but worth tracking down.
Cool.
Excellent. Well, guys, this was a blast as always. Really enjoyed recording with all of you today. And yes, and definitely honor. Hopefully, this is a great tribute to Peter David. And if you are listening, viewing out there, thank you so much for supporting us. And please a like, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you are. We say it every time on YouTube, but if we get 50 likes on any episode, it could be this one, it could be any other, but Will Rose is right here. He can verify. He will film himself. We've said in the past, frolicking through a field of flowers. We could do that. We could also show him going through his comic collection. There's a number of things he would do. You could vote on that. He'll do whatever.
Oh,
Yeah.
Instagram poll. What should Will do to get 50 likes? I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous.
Yeah. That it could be dangerous, but we're opening the floor now. So
I'm game.
See that happening. Yeah.
I'm not bashful. I'm not bashful.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks so much to everyone for supporting us. And remember, we are all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests. Peace.